What's up, everybody? Welcome into episode 2 of the Run In Podcast. I am your host, Big Mike. Hope everybody's doing great today on June 16th. It's a Sunday. It is Father's Day. So, hopefully, everyone has had a great weekend. You got to celebrate your dad, or if you are a dad, you've gotten to celebrate with your family. Got some cool stuff for Father's Day. Hopefully, got to watch some wrestling. We just had Clash at the Castle yesterday over in Scotland from WWE. Pretty good show. Won't go into that too much today. We'll touch on it, but we'll have our Thursday night Triple Threat podcast recap show on this Thursday with Mr. U and Air Raid Mike on Thursday at 8 o'clock Central. So make sure you tune into that to get my full thoughts and comments and things on that. I will touch on a little bit on today's format, which you guys will hear about in just a second. So hopefully you guys got to enjoy that, got to enjoy some time off today, some relaxing time with the family, and just had a good day in general. Happy Father's Day. Today's show, we are going to do something a little different. I asked on Twitter the other day for questions and things like that, just an ask me anything for you guys to get to know me. We're new in this. It's episode 2. You guys don't know a whole lot about me or about my wrestling fandom or where it came from, how it goes. Hopefully, you guys will get to know me as we go. It's what it's all about, just so I can make that connection with you guys, the audience, kind of get to know what I like, what I don't like, matches that I've liked, looking forward to, things like that. So we'll do one of these every so often and ask me anything just so I can get feedback from you guys, give you some more information about things I like, my opinions on different things, and just overall wrestling. We will stick to wrestling questions because it is a wrestling podcast. I had a couple. Thank you, Herb, at Herb Ragsdale on Twitter at the Herb and Raj podcast. He's a good friend of mine. Asked a silly question that we ask each other all the time, just to kind of hype each other up. So I appreciate that. So if you go see the post on Twitter at _ Big Mike 27, I appreciate it. But we will stick to wrestling questions in general, just since it is a wrestling podcast. So without further ado, we will get to the first question coming up here. Someone asked, what is it like to be a lifelong wrestling fan? Overall, it's pretty cool. I've loved it all my life. Like I said in episode 1, watching it since I was a kid, have loved it. Not really on and off, mostly on. I've taken a couple of breaks here and there, but overall, watched it since I was a kid. And I love being a wrestling fan. It does get difficult sometimes, sometimes because of other wrestling fans, but mostly because of people who don't like wrestling. Wrestling's one of those kind of fringe entertainment things that people like to take shots at, especially non-wrestling fans. The question I get the most from most of those guys is, well, you know it's fake, right? Well, and I kind of come back with them and say, well, it's not necessarily fake. It is scripted. But there again, so is 99% of all other television you watch. When you tune into ER or Grey's Anatomy or, CSI or something like that, those aren't real doctors or forensic scientists or detectives or police. They're characters. They're real people playing a fake character, progressing a story. And so is wrestling. Don't try to make it more than what it is. This is a entertainment forum. They're here to tell a story in the form of combat. People do stunts in movies, people do stunts in television shows. These are people doing stunts, stimulating a fight, trying to protect each other, by the way. But if you don't like it, that's fine. But nobody says if they don't like CSI, for example, well, those aren't real scientists. That's not real, right? No, nobody says that because it's a TV show. For some reason, people get this thing in their head where everybody that's a wrestling fan, we think it's real. We think it's 100% fighting to the death. There should be all kinds of blood and guts. We understand it's not. I learned wrestling wasn't real when I was probably 10 or 11. I knew it was fake. The Undertaker, one of the most famous characters in wrestling, played a dead man. It's not real, guys. The characters are not real. He's not really a dead guy. Kane's not really his brother. They're playing characters. Most of us, 90% of the wrestling fandom, understand that. So when you tell us it's not real, okay, we're still going to enjoy that. Hopefully that makes my point. Obviously I try not to get too worked up about it. um, there are other wrestling fans, as you will see in the next question, that make it hard to be a wrestling fan as well. So we will roll right into the next question and kind of explain a little bit of that. Next question comes up out of AEW or WWE, AEW, ROH, which is Ring of Honor, TNA, and NJPW, which is New Japan Pro Wrestling. Which is your favorite? My favorite, just because I've watched it since I was a little kid, again, is WWE. I like the stories they tell. Again, I love wrestling for the stories. If you've watched this on Thursday Night Triple Threat, you will see my opinion is very based on how it progresses a story. I am less concerned about who physically wins or loses a match as long as it progresses the story, which we will talk about later. I do like those other companies. I think they have value. I think AEW has massive value in the wrestling world. I do think they are a number two. They have really good matches. They do have some of the best wrestlers in the world. They do tell some good stories. They do focus on more of the athletic side and more of the combat side, I guess is the best way to put it. So their stories aren't as developed in a lot of times. Not saying all their stories, because they do have some really good stories as well. I would say TNA is probably next for me, then Ring of Honor, and then just because New Japan, I don't know as much about it. It is really hard to consume both TNA, Ring of Honor, and New Japan, especially if you're like me and have YouTube TV. I don't have the networks that they necessarily come on. I know Ring of Honor will come on every now and then, but it's harder to consume those. So those are kind of the bottom three, AEW and WWE being 2 and 1 there. But again, and this is kind of what I alluded to in the first question, sometimes other wrestling fans make it hard to be a wrestling fan, because they want you to choose one or the other. Well, you can like WWE, but it means you have to hate AEW. No, I don't like everything about it, but I don't like everything about WWE either. You don't have to hate one to like the other. I like them both. I'm not going to choose between one or the other. Do I have a favorite? Yes. WWE is my favorite. Again, I take it back to a sports analogy because I'm a huge sports fan. As a fan of any sports team, if I say I like one player on that sports team, it doesn't mean I hate all the other players. That means I have a favorite player. That's about it. Some of the other players are good. Some of the other players are decent. Some of the other players are really, really good. But I have a favorite. I think they're the best. And that's all there is to it. Doesn't mean I'm going to hate on the other players. I'm not going to say, if I'm a Lakers fan, for say, just because I know if I like LeBron, I'm not going to say AD sucks because LeBron's my favorite. It's just you can like two things. And I think people on the internet, and especially wrestling fans, I guess maybe I see it because I am a wrestling fan, see wrestling Twitter, especially, or X, whatever you want to call it. I see that more than most, but people tend to draw lines. And if you step one toe over the line, then you're crazy or you're stupid or any number of things like that. And it's just it's not there. All 5 of the shows listed in this question have merit. All of them have had incredible wrestlers come through. It is good for AEW and those other guys to exist to keep WWE in check. Everybody remembers, all wrestling fans, I say, well, remember the Monday Night Wars when WCW and WWE were going at it in the 90s. That made the product better. It made the companies try to do more. Doesn't mean that the company still didn't screw up and do stupid stuff, because they did a lot. But competition creates cash, creates content, creates more creativity. It challenges you. So more is better. And it doesn't mean you have to hate the rest of them to go into it. And I think that's probably the best way I can explain that and go through it. So we'll kind of get off of my soapbox there. off of all that, and we'll get into somebody else's soapbox a little bit. The next question is: do you agree with Bully Ray's criticism of the match between Daniel Garcia and Nick Koromoto? For those who don't know who any of those people are, or who only few people are, um, Daniel Garcia and Nick Koromoto recently had a match. I can't remember if it was on AEW or Ring of Honor. I think it was AEW. Um, and Bully Ray did not like the way that the match went. Bully Ray famously, has been a wrestler for most of my viewing days, from Bubba Ray with Team 3D and WWE, ECW, TNA. He's been all over. He's a legend. He's a Hall of Famer, um, who still talks about wrestling on his podcast and many other places because he knows what he's talking about. So I'm not going to say that his criticism is invalid. I actually agree with some of what he says. For those that don't know what he said, basically, Nick Koromoto and Daniel Garcia had the match. Nick Koromoto is a very large individual. Daniel Garcia is more of an average individual. So it ended up being what we call a squash match, very quick, very decisive match where Daniel Garcia won. He is the bigger talent. They were trying to showcase him. But Nick Koromoto, as a larger competitor, did not get any offense in. So we talk about being a wrestling fan, kind of the other stuff, your believability. You got to have some sort of believability in some parts of wrestling. His criticism was it would have been more believable and would have been more impactful if Nick Koromoto had gotten more offense in before Daniel Garcia had beaten him. And I don't know enough about the Daniel Garcia character to be able to say whether I 100% agree with it or not. But in general, as far as just a statement or as a thought, I can agree with that. You want to be able to believe the ending of a match. If somebody's 3 times the size of someone else, the smaller person shouldn't just be able to hit one shot and beat the other guy. It just doesn't happen very, very often. Obviously, there are instances before people start coming to the comments. I realize there are instances where it has happened, but on a regular basis, it's not going to go that way. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of squash matches in general, unless it furthers a story again. You think of somebody like Bill Goldberg, who came in and did a lot of squash, but they were trying to build that character as an unstoppable force, where those squash matches made sense because that was his character. He was the unstoppable giant or big guy, final boss kind of thing, to take some previous monikers from The Rock. Now, Daniel Garcia is not that guy. He's not the dominant force that a squash match would really benefit that well from. So I don't necessarily like that kind of thing in this particular match with this particular character that they're trying to build up, but it does have merit in other instances. So I guess, yeah, and easy answer would be, in this situation between those two wrestlers, I get it. I don't think it should have been a quick squash match in favor of Daniel Garcia either. But there are times and there are ways to do that in wrestling going forward that build that character and build that story, because again, I love stories. So hopefully that answers your question. I know I'm not an expert on that because, again, AEW is not my main source or my main focus. I do watch it again, but I don't know as much about that. I had to do a little research on it to see to get the answer, and that's why I wanted to turn it into more of just an overall focus instead of criticizing or agreeing with the point in that specific match. So thank you for that question. We will move on to the next one. Next one coming in, it says, name one wrestler who you think should be only a face and who should only be a heel. And this is interesting because you have a lot of dynamics where people switch, from being a good guy to a bad guy to good guy, which is, if you're not familiar, I know there's a few people here who watch this that aren't familiar. It's what a heel and a face is. A face is a good guy, heel is a bad guy. But one person who I think, I'll start with the heel first. And I'll go right now, present day, Logan Paul should never be a face. With his background in the YouTube space and the social media space and being an influencer, and just his attitude, his character, the way he presents himself, I don't think Logan Face should ever be presented as the good guy in the situation. I think his character lends him more, and his demeanor lends him more to being a heel. Uh, and I think he's just really good at it. Somebody else who I agree with that, who they've tried to make a face a few times, who's currently a face now, is The Miz. Coming from reality TV again, kind of that influencer space, kind of the same deal, not quite as much as Logan Paul. Coming from that area, that realm into wrestling, as some of the attitudes that he had, some of the characters he played at the beginning, I think he could very easily have been a lifetime heel and been perfect. His babyface runs have been okay. They have not been great. Right now he gets a pass because he's with R-Truth, and R-Truth may be the funniest man on the planet. So that kind of makes that into a nice little face dynamic because they can play off of each other. But I don't think that he will ever be long-term big main event baby face either. As far as the other side goes, that one's harder, man. I mean, it's hard, especially in today's wrestling culture, to say who should be a face and nothing else. Because we as a wrestling fan base and even as a society tend to turn on the good guy when they're too good. Um, you've seen it in a few examples. One that kind of comes to mind, and I get it, there's probably for different reasons, but Liv Morgan a few years ago, not this particular run because she's a heel now. She was kind of the baby face coming up. Everybody loved it. Everybody loved her fighting for the title. When she was coming from behind, coming through, everybody loved it. But when she won the championship, trying to keep that same babyface character didn't work. People started turning on her very quickly. So to be a face from start to finish and should never swap, I don't know that it's possible. You look at somebody like a John Cena who started off as a heel very early, quickly turned to a face and has never turned back. But look back and see how many people have begged in the internet wrestling community has begged for him to be a heel, and he never has. Now, again, I'm against that. That may have me, hated in the IWC. I don't think John Cena should ever be a true heel ever again because of everything he does behind the scenes. I get it. It's a show, but there's still some disbelief, especially when he does all the stuff with the Make-A-Wish Foundation and things like that, where he's going into kids' hospital rooms who may not know that this is fake, who may not know that this is scripted. They see John Cena as this superhero who comes in and defeats the bad guy in the end. And you've got to have somebody like that. Normally they switch it up and all that, but for 20 years, John Cena was that. And I don't think at any point in time, if he ever makes another run, if he ever comes back, I'm glad that they never did it towards the end of his run where they ever really turned him into a heel. You can kind of be a smart ass baby face, which a lot of fans love now, especially if you know me. I'm a pretty big smart ass myself, so I love I love a good smart ass. And so some faces with some fire and some banter are good, but he's really the only example I can think of that I don't know that I would ever turn into a bad guy. You've seen The Rock come back as a bad guy now. Hulk Hogan finally turned as a bad guy a long time ago and has swapped back and forth. Cody Rhodes, who's probably the biggest good guy right now, has swapped back and forth. He was a heel before he came into WWE. I don't see him being a lifelong babyface. I think he could very easily turn heel. He has a lot of heel tendencies. There are a lot of people that don't like him now, so he could very easily be a heel there. So I don't know. To me, it's a lot harder being a babyface than it is to be a heel. It is easier to get people to hate you than it is to get people to love you. So for that aspect in general, I don't know that there will ever be a lifelong babyface period. So let's see. Next question. We've got, what do you consider to be the most shocking, unplanned moment in WWE history? even though it wasn't, I don't know that it was ever, obviously it was never televised, but the death of Owen Hart. Because obviously that happened during a show. Very, very big tragedy. One of the best, and even if he wasn't one of the best wrestlers, it was still a tragedy. Um, I don't know the whole story. I know he was trying to come into the ring via zip line or cable or something from the rafters, and somehow fell out of the rafters, fell to the mat, and died. Um, and obviously, you don't get more shocking than that. Who knows where his career would have gone, where the WWE would have gone with him. Obviously, he has the famous wrestling family and the Harts. He may have ended up being one of the greatest of all time. He was very well on his way, getting out of Brett's shadow and making his own. He had already started making his own way, but definitely that kind of thing would be the most shocking unplanned moment that I can remember. Obviously there's been stuff on TV and they try to play it off, but um, for that something like that to happen and to go through that you don't get any more shocking than that. Um, so yeah, I mean I know it's kind of a downer. We'll move on to the next one to go through there. Next question. We'll look forward. What upcoming match are you most looking forward to and why? There's a lot, man. Especially after Clash. I'm really looking forward to Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. I think that's going to be a really good match. It's going to be a very good fight. They're both incredible wrestlers. They're both really good at what they do. Um, but just the story they've created with the animosity between them on screen and Drew being obsessed with Punk and Punk screwing Drew, numerous times now, and including in his hometown. When they have that match that I think personally will happen at SummerSlam, as long as CM Punk is healthy, it will probably be the biggest match in SummerSlam this year, regardless of the title matches you guys have. I'm sure Cody will have a title match. If Damian Priest is healthy, hopefully he is, and makes it to SummerSlam, you're going to have Damian Priest and Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship there. I think whoever Cody's facing, whether it's Solo or anybody else, Randy Orton, whoever that match ends up being at SummerSlam, I think it's going to be a really good match. But it does not get any bigger right now than Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. That's your money match. That's your main event, regardless of title. And I don't know that you get any bigger than that. So yeah, that's probably the match I'm looking forward to the most, just because I know it's going to be really good. Which gets me to kind of a question I've heard and what I'll talk about. Just because of this, I've had a lot of people tell me, and I'm sorry I don't have a title card for this one, but I've had a lot of people ask, do you think WWE messed up at Clash of the Castle? And I don't. I think it was a brilliant booking decision by Triple H to tell the story of CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. Obviously, if you haven't seen the show, there are obviously spoilers already, but I'll put it in the description that there are going to be spoilers for Clash. Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest for the championship in Scotland, in Drew's hometown at Clash at the Castle. CM Punk comes in, screws Drew McIntyre, cost him the match where Damian Priest wins. And that's cool for two reasons. Again, the story between Drew and Punk, which I'll get into, have already talked about a little bit. We'll get into it more in a little bit, but it also creates two big matches at SummerSlam, not just one. Because yes, you've got Drew and CM Punk, which again should be the main event, should be huge, but you also have Damian Priest and Gunther now, which is going to be a hell of a match. Again, depending on Damian Priest's health, took a nasty spill during the match. Hopefully his ankle's okay. I'm sure we'll find out more tomorrow night. I'm sure he's having it looked at. But now you have two huge matches instead of one match to sell. and at your biggest pay-per-view of the year, having two big matches like that, among others, but two big money matches like that is infinitely better than one. So how could you not have done that? One, it's been building up to it for a while, but two, when Gunther won King of the Ring and got a guaranteed title shot, it pretty much wrote this ending in stone, because there was no way they were going to have Drew McIntyre win and lose next month at Money in the Bank, because that makes no sense. And there's no way they're going to let Drew win and have to go face Gunther at SummerSlam when CM Punk is sitting there, should be healthy by then, and that match doesn't happen at your second biggest show of the year. It just doesn't make sense. So 100%, it was the right decision to do that. You get a huge moment, not necessarily a pop, because I know the crowd went dead when it happened. But on a worldwide scan, I'm sure everybody freaked out when they saw, and the way they shot it, big ups to the production team. I know there was a lot of botches in this show, but the production team had a couple of camera angles, which I'll talk about the other one in a second, just on a one-off. The way they shot it from that angle, and you saw someone with a striped shirt slide in and start to count, unless you're just super into it like I am and saw the slick back hair and kind of realized it was CM Punk, you're like, okay, so he's going to win. He's going to win. And then you realize, oh no, oh crap, that's CM Punk. He's going to screw him again. That surprise in that moment creates a surprise moment across the entire universe. In the building, it fell flat because he's in his hometown. They were excited. They wanted him to win. But sometimes that creates a better story than getting the payoff right there. You look at what happened at WrestleMania with Cody Rhodes. Well, they did a lot of this at Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania last year. Everybody's like, oh, they made the wrong decision. Cody should have won. Cody should have won. Well, no, let the story finish out, and the story ends up being 10 times better, Cody winning this year. So sometimes having that disappointment right then and there creates a better moment going forward. So now when you have SummerSlam come and you get that big match, that match means 10 times more now than it did yesterday. So with that, I mean, I 100% agree with the decision. I think he did it beautifully. Even with the botch with the ropes and all that, I think that match ended up being really well done. Sorry. Had a great ending and 100% agree with it. So we will have more on that, and I'll go more in depth with the other matches and things like that on our Thursday night Triple Threat podcast this Thursday night with myself, Mr. U, and Air Raid Mike at 8 p.m. Central on the They Call Me Mr. U podcast network. Be sure that is a live show. Be sure to tap in, make comments, ask questions there. We're always looking for your feedback as we go through the recap on the show. So hopefully see you there. Make sure you guys follow me, man. Thank you. We are up to 23 subscribers before I started this video. So thank you to everybody who has subscribed, liked, asked questions. Be sure to check in at _Big Mike 27 on all socials and on YouTube. Go and subscribe. Hopefully we can get to 50 subscribers. So next time we have an Ask Me Anything like this, we can do it with live questions and it'll be even cooler. I'll be able to kind of go back and forth with you guys instead of you guys just listening to pre-done questions, things like that. So anything we can do to help back. And I still always, welcome any constructive criticism you guys have. Please let me know what we can do better, what we can do different, and let us know what we're doing well already. It's always good to hear some positive stuff too. But make sure going forward, the shows are probably going to be on Thursday nights at 8 Central when we don't have a Thursday night run. Thursday night Triple Threat is usually that's 2 a month before and after a PLE or pay-per-view. So I will probably use this as more subsidies of that to kind of keep that time slot going. But we will have shows like this on Sundays or something like that that are trying to just kind of keep my face in front of you so you guys can hear me talk. You can hear what I'm about and things like that. So we'll still have these short little episodes, but the main episodes will start being on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Central here at _Big Mike 27. And make sure to tune in to the Thursday Night Triple That podcast as well on the They Call Me Mr. U network. Hope everybody has a great Sunday, and let's go.